Welcome back. Trade Union Solidarity is planning to go ahead with a strike action against Sasol over its new empowerment scheme, Sasol Khanyisa. This comes after the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, CCMA, issued to Solidarity a certificate of non-resolution after having held hearings with both parties in a dispute over a broad-based black economic empowerment scheme. Sasol's new 21 billion rand B-BBEE ownership structure will be implemented to achieve effective direct and indirect B-BBEE ownership of at least 25% in Sasol South Africa, a wholly owned subsidiary of Sasol. Sasol says intention is not to create a divide between its black and white employees, but to participate in the transformation of the South African economy to the benefit of all citizens. Soria Hay is head of corporate finance at Bravura, and she joins us to unpack the details about this share scheme. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, Colin. Thanks for having me.
First of all, the issue of fairness. Is Solidarity having a point regarding the inclusion of white employees in a black empowerment scheme?
Colin, I'm also worried, or always worried, when employees become involved with a transaction and some are included and some are excluded, because then you are not only talking BEE ownership, you are actually starting to get into the labour issues. So I think Solidarity at least has a point to look at it. Whether they should strike or not is not for me to say.
At the moment, the white employees feel aggrieved that they work for the same company, but they are being discriminated unfairly.
Yes, so it's interesting. The previous Sasol scheme that came to an end now included white employees, and there was no value at all that accrued to any of the participants. And now going forward, only the eligible employees will be included. And it's interesting, I do wonder why, because the legislation and the BEE codes actually allow for up to 15% of white people to be included in what they call a broad-based scheme for ownership purposes. So Sasol could have done something different if they wanted to.
Now, on the side of the employees, the argument would be that white people have been empowered already before and black people are the previously disadvantaged, and this is their time. What do you say regarding that argument?
No, I think it is a valid argument. I think arguments on both sides here are valid. I think from an employer perspective, you have to really think carefully when you implement these kind of transactions, because labour unrest and this kind of potential outcome is not something that an employer really wants.
But this thing is based on an initial public offering. This is not the first black broad-based empowerment scheme that has been introduced in the country. Why especially this one? I mean, the white employees don't belong to other B-BBEE share schemes.
No, it's interesting, they actually do. So in many of the schemes, they use the BEE codes and the broad-based ownership legislation, which allows for up to 15% of the participants to be white. So it's very rare actually for companies to have employees on the same rank and position, but treat them differently for purposes of a BEE scheme.
According to your experience, you've worked on more than 50 share schemes. What are the daunting tasks when it comes to implementing a share scheme that has to do with black empowerment where white people are involved?
So there are really two things that we look at very carefully at Bravura when we advise. The first one is we typically would look at across the employee ranks up to a certain position, and then you have to ensure that you have the right percentage of black people, also the right percentage of black female people, because you get additional points for that. So that's the first one to really consider very carefully. And the second one, from a share ownership perspective, is many of these trusts, you have a right to a participation one day, but you don't actually own a share. And the BEE Commission doesn't like that. They actually came out in November and they said they don't believe the Sasol employee scheme is valid in terms of the legislation. So we look at that very carefully as well.
What options then should Sasol look at when it has to weigh in on a fair decision that has to be made? Because it would sound to other people that it's not good enough to say that you are dividing black and white employees, but then look at the code and then should it be amended where it has to?
So the scheme has already been approved by shareholders. So the shareholders would have to approve any changes to the scheme. Having said that, Solidarity is now asking for a new scheme, which would also have to be approved by shareholders under the JSE rules. So I don't know what Sasol will do. I think they find themselves between a rock and a hard place here.
All right. Thank you very much for making time to speak to us then.
Thanks, Colin.
All right. That Soria Hay, Head of Corporate Finance at Bravura, and she's an expert in BBEE.